So whenever you feel ready, friends, just have a lie down. Just lie down. Take a minute. Take a minute. Good. And as you're lying, as you're settling into your mat, just take a minute to check in with your breath. So as you're checking in with said breath, maybe play with a little tuck and untuck of your pelvis. Maybe a little side to side action of your pelvis. And just notice if one side is less mobile or less amenable or stickier. And take a minute and see if you can just shift a little bit of space just by virtue of breathing. Big breath in, big breath out. And then let that go, whatever that is. And take your arms up, fingertips to the sky. Let your shoulders weight into the floor and reach your arms overhead a little bit. And maybe it's all the way and maybe it's just a little bit. And take a minute here and see where you have easy access to your breath. So most commonly, we're going to want to take it into our bellies and kind of the front of the chest, which is fine. So do that. And then maybe on your next breath, see if you can shift your inhale into the floor a little bit. And just notice how maybe that's different. Big breath in, big breath out. And then whenever you feel ready, bring your arms down by your side. And again, just take a big breath in, big breath out. And notice where you're at. One more inhale, exhale. Oh. And then whenever you feel ready, we're going to grab your balls. If they are in a double bag, you can keep them in the double bag or you can take out one. And we're going to rotate onto hands and knees. And we're going to put the balls in the front of the calf. And we're shooting for that tib anterior muscle that's right in the front, that's just to the side of your shin bone. But if you've got those double balls, it's going to give you a little bit more weight distribution evenly through the whole calf, so that there will probably be a little bit of touching around the shin bone, but we're not going to weight too heavily into the bone itself. So kind of find the sweet spot for you. It might be a little higher up towards the knee, or it might be a little lower towards the ankle. If you're like me, it's all interesting. So you can just kind of choose where you want to work today. And then we're going to start with just shifting the weight of our body a little forward and a little back. And this is just going to allow you to decide how much pressure you want to put down and through that ball. And once you find a little sweet spot, that is the pressure that you want to work with today, you're going to play with your rotation of letting your butt kind of drop to the side that the ball is on. And that's going to just eke the ball up in between that space between your tibia and your fibula just a little bit. And so here you can kind of play with rocking in and out of that, or a little forward and a little back, or maybe just staying really heavy and breathing. You take a big breath in and a big breath out. And at any point, if you want to shift the balls, don't feel like you're stuck in your first choice. You are always welcome to move them around if they are being called somewhere else. And take a big inhale, big exhale. Make sure that any extraneous movement, like the rocking, is being used to help you nestle a little deeper into the balls. Big breath in, big breath out. And one more big inhale and exhale. And then whenever you feel ready, you can take that calf off of the ball and maybe stay in hands and knees and just do a couple of press backs of reaching your butt back towards your feet a little and just seeing what kind of space you have from right to left. It might feel like a big shift. It might feel like a small shift. It might not feel like a shift, but I hope it does. And big breath in, big breath out. Whenever you feel ready, we'll move to the other side. So again, take a minute to kind of decide where you want to work on this leg. It might be really different from the first one. So you can play with that ball being a little higher up towards the knee. Bring it down a little and figure out where do you need to spend a few minutes. And make sure that that breath is helping you to settle into the ball as you shift your weight a little forward and a little back. We're going to find the pressure that makes the most sense for you in this moment. Big breath in, big breath out. And then find the pressure that works for you and then find a little rotation. Letting your butt drop to the same side as the ball is on. Letting that ball ease up in between those two lower leg bones. And letting that movement help facilitate more drop, more breath. Big breath in, big breath out. Good. Two more. Big inhale, big exhale. Last one, big breath in and big breath out. And whenever you feel ready, you can just take your lower leg off of the ball and again, play with maybe some press backs here or a child's pose. And we're trying to just eke out more length in the front of the ankle without those toes sickling towards each other, which is somewhat common. And big breath in, big breath out. Whenever you feel ready, you're going to grab your yoga brick and one or two balls. And we're going to put the balls up on the brick and then the back of the leg up on the balls. So I like to start somewhere in the middle usually, but you might find that down lower is chatting to you, or maybe it's a little higher up. All of them are good options. But see if you can find a sweet spot that's calling your name. If you want a little bit more downward pressure, you can take your other leg and put it on top. See if that is okay amount of pressure. Make sure it's not too interesting. And then we're going to do a little point and flex. And breathing. Big breath in. Big breath out. Good. And then maybe add a little rotation. You're going to let the leg go a little to the outside, a little to the inside. Feel out what's interesting for you today. Ooh, well, I found my sweet spot. So again, we want to think about how weighted can we get around the ball, and that any movement is sort of plowing through the tissues as opposed to gliding on the top of the tissues. So once you find that sweet spot and you work that point and flex, you want to try to be moving through the ball as opposed to just doing like a quick glide on the top. Big breath in, big breath out. One more here. Big inhale and exhale. And then whenever you feel ready, you can let that go. And we'll bring your other calf up onto the balls. Maybe you want to start in the middle and just see if that is your spot. Maybe you want to go a little lower towards your heel or a little higher towards your knee. And then when you kind of nestle into the spot that's calling your name, keeping roughly center, we'll play with a little of that point and flex. Again, trying to stay down and around the balls. If you want to use the other leg as a little bit of downward pressure. Ooh, that got radically more interesting. Make sure you can still keep breathing. Big breath in, big breath out. And then if you'd like to add on, you can play with that rotation, letting the leg externally rotate a little, internally rotate a little. Maybe one of those rotations is speaking to you more. For me, it's all internal rotation today. And then again, maybe adding in a little point and flex, trying to kind of plow the ball through the tissues so we get a little deeper, a little more relaxed. Big breath in, big breath out. Also play with a circle with your ankle. See how that feels. Big inhale, big exhale. Woo. One more big breath in. And big breath out. And then whenever you feel ready, you can let that go. If you'd like to do a little child's pose check-in, feel free. If you want to do a little downward dog, pedal through your feet, feel some of that length in your calves, feel free. I'm going to give you guys about a minute to kind of play with whatever is calling your name, and also finding your foam roller. Big, big breaths. Beautiful, you guys. Good, love it. One more big breath in. And big breath out. And then make your way to grab your roller. You might need 2 yoga bricks or a yoga brick and a pillow. So we're going to use 1 yoga brick as a pillow, or an actual pillow as a pillow, since you're at home. And you're going to put your balls aside. We're going to use a yoga brick or some kind of elevation to lift up the foam roller. And you're gonna lie on your side. And we're gonna roll out the inner thigh. All right, so the elevation is just gonna put a little bit more pressure into the adductors. And you're gonna have your ankle roughly in line with your knee just to start, but by no means do you have to stay there. Now we're just gonna take a big breath in, big breath out. And I'm gonna run you through some options, okay? So from here, you could just press down a little bit with your thigh bone. And that's gonna just meet the resistance of the roller a little bit more. And then I'm gonna imagine that I'm gonna drag my knee up the roller. And I'm not actually, I am moving it a little bit so that if I pull my knee up my roller, the roller is gonna pin my tissue and drag it down my roller. So we're working some internal rotation here. So from here, after you've established a little bit of that pin and drag, we're gonna do a little rocking of the pelvis forward. So the roller will come up and then rolling back towards the knee. Big breath in, big breath out. And then finding that pin and drag, pin, a little drag, and then you're gonna internally rotate the thigh bone. So the ankle will lift off. That's gonna change the point of contact in that inner thigh. And so it usually makes it a little bit more interesting. You're gonna keep the internal rotation and straighten the leg, which sometimes is more interesting. And then bending the knee back and lowering that down. So you really could do whatever the fuck you want, but these are some options that I'm going to lay out for you. So taking a big breath in, big breath out, you could stay there close to your knee, or if you'd like, you can move the roller a little higher up. And again, play with your pin and drag, a little pelvic rotation, forward and back. Oh, this is way more interesting as I get closer to my crotch for me. And then also playing with the internal rotation of the leg and the extension. High foot and back and lower. Good. And now you guys can kind of just go play with it. If you want to go higher up towards your crotch, at a certain point, you might find that you want to get rid of the yoga brick and then rotate your pelvis so that you're right on top of that roller and play with that pin and drag, rotation and extension. So big breath in, big breath out. It also might just be interesting enough to stay on that pressure point. And maybe you don't want to do the extra movement. It's totally up to you. But we're going to take a few minutes to play with it. Big breath in, big breath out. Notice if any of the movement is making you tense in other places of your body, and see if you can let that go and redirect that effort into your rollout. Big inhale, big exhale. Check in with that pin and drag as you work through the other things, so that we're really trying to traction that tissue towards internal rotation. Big breath in, big breath out. One more big breath in, big breath out, and then pause for a minute. And I just want to give everybody one last chance to go really high up towards their pubic bone if you haven't already. Or if you're on like the spot of your dreams that's nowhere near your pubic bone, that's totally fine. But I want everybody to at least have the opportunity to kind of go to one last spot. And taking a big breath in and a big breath out. Big inhale, big exhale. One more big breath in, big breath out. Whenever you feel ready, you can unrotate your pelvis. You can move that foam roller out of the way. You could move back through your child's pose or stretch of your choice. I'm always surprised. I know I say this like every class, but I'm always surprised how much further back my hips get when I release my inner thigh. It's so crazy. And I feel so lopsided right now. Big breath in, big breath out. One more. And then we'll set up for the other side. Alrighty. So having your head support, whatever that is. And then starting, just because it's the most supportive with the ankle and the knee in alignment on top of the roller. It's the most supportive. The ankle will kind of decrease how much pressure is in that inner thigh. While you figure out what this side needs, it might need more support. It might need less support. So we're going to play with the pin, just that pressing down a little and then pulling up a little. So if we're pulling the knee up the roller, kind of dragging it, then the inner thigh tissue is going to get dragged down the roller. Playing with the pin and drag. Playing with that rotation of rocking the pelvis forward, pulling the pelvis back, letting the roller move up the inner thigh, down the inner thigh. Keeping the pin and drag as we send that leg into rotation, internal rotation and extension of that knee and flexion and lowering down. And of course, anything else that comes to you that feels good, go for it. But take some time to explore. You can go as high up into your inner thigh as you want, or maybe you want to stay around that knee. And taking a big breath in and a big breath out. And making sure, like I just noticed that I was doing a lot of rocking, but I was really kind of keeping away from my roller. So I'm going to allow my leg to get heavier and make my rocks a little smaller. Big breath in, big breath out. And whatever movement you want to play with is great. Just make sure it's not causing you to hold tension elsewhere in your body. Big inhale, big exhale. It lets you get nice and heavy. Oof. Beautiful, you guys. Big breath in. Big breath out. If you want to play with going higher up towards your pubic bone. You might want to get rid of the yoga breath. Maybe, maybe, maybe. Really just depends on 100 different things. See if you can keep playing with the pin and the drag, pulling up to encourage that inner thigh to move into internal rotation. Big breath in, big breath out. One more big inhale, big exhale. And then take a moment. If there's some place that you did not explore that you want to explore, then now's the time. Big breath in, big breath out. One more big inhale, big exhale. And then let things kind of even out. Bring yourself back towards your kind of side lying. Big inhale, big exhale. If you want to go back through that child's pose, if you've been using that as kind of a check-in point, then do that. Or downward dog, or whatever stretch is calling your name. Big breath in, big breath out. Oh, yeah. And maybe when you get back into your child's pose or your press back, of doing that little drop of your pelvis from side to side that we did with the ball underneath the calf, and just feeling that rotation accessibility. And I still feel restricted, a little more restricted on one side than the other, but it feels better. And big breath in, big breath out. All right. So now we're going to keep using the roller for the hip, and then we'll come back to the balls for the back of the tushy. But I like using the roller sometimes because of the compression that it gives to the pelvis. So I know for a lot of you guys, when you come in for privates and I kind of press down on your hip crest and it creates some space around your sacrum, you can kind of replicate that with the roller. So we're going to do that now. You're going to lie down on your side. So up here, I'm on my leg bone, which we don't want. As I go a little higher up, boom, now I'm in my hip and not on the leg bone itself. And then you can come down onto your elbow and have that knee a little forward. Now, that being said, if this doesn't feel good on your elbows or your shoulders, or you just don't like it, you can do this with the balls instead and just put the balls in the side hip. And we'll do roughly the same pattern anyway. But this can help to create some of that pressure to get that SI joint a little relieved, pressure relieved, like a little hip squeeze. All right. So that top leg foot can be on the mat. That bottom knee is on the mat, and you've got a nice hip crease. And we're going to rock the pelvis a little forward, and then we're going to rock the pelvis a little back. So we're exploring that whole well of the hip. And I'm going to try to not fall off my table, but we all know it's happened. Big breath in, big breath out, little rotation forward, little rotation back. If you want to, you could take your top hand and put it on your top hip point and think about pulling those two hip points towards each other. Especially in that rocking forward, pulling those two hip points towards each other and widening through the backside. And see how heavy and weighted you can get into the roller. Big breath in and big breath out. And then find somewhere that's interesting. It might be more forward, it might be more back, totally depends. And then we're gonna lift up the bottom knee. So the bottom knee will lift off. It's gonna drag those tissues into a little bit more length and then back and down. You can also use that top hand to support your neck. I noticed I was getting scrunchy. Big breath in, big breath out. A little lift, a little lower. Notice if you're clenching, see if you can relax a little deeper. We're gonna do 2 more passes. Big inhale, big exhale. Last one. Big breath in, big breath out. Let that leg rest on the mat. And then again, we're gonna rotate a little forward and a little back. Noticing any shifts or changes. One more inhale, exhale. And then go ahead and lower that top knee. You can bring yourself back into a little child's pose. Ooh, and I just keep getting further and further back, my butt towards my feet. Big breath in, big breath out. Now, whenever you feel ready, we'll shift over to the other side. So again, here I'm on my thigh bone, and my greater trochanter is whoop, right over the top of it. And now I'm going to come down into that well of my hip. Bottom knee will be bent a little forward, so you're in some hip flexion. That top leg can come up. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to rock a little forward. We're going to rock a little back. And if you want to, you can always take your hand onto that opposite hip and think about really dragging that hip point forward and around and widening through your back body. And maybe pause in one of these rotations and be like, okay, is there any way that I could just get a little bit heavier? Maybe. Big breath in, big breath out. One more inhale, exhale. And then find one of these angles that is feeling interesting for you. Maybe it's a little more forward, maybe it's a little more back. And then you're going to keep the bottom foot on the mat, but you're going to lift the knee up. Little left, little lower. How weighted and heavy can you make your butt? Big breath in, big breath out. Breathing. Support your neck if you need to. And last one, big inhale. Big exhale. Good. And then whenever you feel ready, you can let that knee come back to the floor. And again, maybe rock a little forward and rock a little back. One more big breath in. Big breath out. And then whenever you feel ready, come back to your check-in. Maybe it's that child's pose. Maybe it's something else. All right. So now, whenever you feel ready, we're going to come back to our balls in our butts. Take out one ball. Have a lie down. And before you place the ball, take a minute and check in with where your breath is. Maybe doing a little tucky, untucky, a little side to side. I don't know about you, but like I got way more connection with my floor. And that feels way more accessible for me. So from here, I'd like you to take the ball and you're going to place it at the top of your butt crack and a little to the right. So top of the butt crack, a little to the right, give or take. Everybody's butts are different and where we hold the tension is different. So you might need to go a little lower or a little higher or a little further out. I want you to make sure that you're in flesh and you're not on bone. You're not like sitting on your sacrum with this. And then take your left hand and put it underneath your left butt cheek. And that's going to keep that left pelvic half rotated up so that you can drop a little heavier onto your ball. And then when you feel like you have found a spot, it doesn't need to be the best spot of your life. And it also doesn't need to be the only spot. You can always move the ball. As things release, things might shift. And you're going to toe heel your feet about as wide as your mat and drop your knees together. So we're back into that internal rotation that we were working with the inner thigh. And just take a big breath in and a big breath out and see if you can get a little heavier, a little bit more weighted. And oftentimes this spot is not, it's not like a 10. It's not super sensational. It actually, the feeling of release after we're done is much bigger than the process of doing it. So taking a big breath in, big breath out, and just seeing how weighted can you get. And then we're going to let the knees fall apart and let the knees fall together. And fall apart and together. And apart and together and apart and together. And then keep your knees dropped together. And we're going to do a little tuck of the pelvis by dragging your pubic bone towards your sternum and then just letting that drag go. So you're not going to like stick your butt out and arch your back. We're just going to do a little bit of baby imprint and then just release whatever that baby imprint is. So just release the effort. And then again, a little drag and a little release. And a little drag and a little release. And a little drag and a little release. And then let that go. Take a big breath in, big breath out. Keep the knees dropped together. And you're going to hike your right hip up towards your ribs. So it's not up towards the ceiling. It's just lifting a hip up towards a rib. The other side gets longer. And then switch. So now I'm going to lengthen my right hip down while I hike my left hip up. And then switch. And switch. And switch. And switch. And switch. Last one. Switch. And take a big breath in, big breath out. Just let that go. Release the effort. Take a minute and just breathe. See if you can get a little heavier into the floor, into the ball, or both. And big breath in, big breath out. Whenever you feel ready. Now take the hand and the ball out from underneath your butts. And take a minute here to enjoy all of that cavernous butt space. Big breath in, big breath out. Again, maybe some tuck and untucks. Or some rotations or some hikes, but just feel that out. Ooh, it feels so good to me. I hope it feels good for you. All right, so now we're gonna do the other side. Top of the butt crack and a little to the left, give or take. And right hand under the right butt cheek so that you maintain some pressure down on that left. And you can use as much or as little support on that right side as you like. Walk your feet about as wide as your mat, if they came in at all. Mine did. And take a big breath in, big breath out. We're going to let the knees drop apart. We're going to let the knees drop together. And a little apart. And a little together. And a little apart. And a little together. Last one, a little apart. And a little together. We're going to keep the together, knees together, and then a little tuck and untuck, dragging your pubic bone towards your sternum, and then just releasing that effort. And again, breathing, breathing. Little tuck and release. A little tuck and release. And then inhale, exhale. We're going to do the hip hikes. So hike your left hip up towards your left rib. So you're shortening your left side, you're lengthening your right side. And then switch. And switch. And if you have any desire to move the ball at any time, feel free. If the sensation has traveled, little shift, little shift, little shift, little shift, and a little shift, and shift. Big breath in, big breath out. And whenever you feel ready, let all of that release to neutral-ish. Let yourself just be heavy and weighted for a minute. See if you can just get a tiny bit heavier into the ball, maybe. Into your hand, into the floor. Big breath in. Big breath out. And then whenever you feel ready, we're going to take the ball out from underneath the butt. Take a minute with nothing underneath your butt. Feel all that delicious space back there. Maybe knees and Z's and outsies, maybe a little tuck and untuck, maybe a little hikey unhikey, just sort of feel it out. Take a big breath in, take a big breath out. All right. So now whenever you feel ready, you're going to keep holding on to the one ball and grab your yoga brick and lie on your side. So the first spot we're going to go to is the top of the armpit crease on the shoulder blade side. So here's my arm bone. Here's where it meets my ribs. I'm putting it right there. There it is. Once you get down there, you might find that it's too interesting and you can find a slightly different spot. And then as you're coming down, you can align the back of the skull, the back of the ribs, the back of the sacrum with roughly the back of your mat. And it helps just give you a little bit of a frame, figure out what the frick is going on. And also as I laid down, my ball kind of shifted out of the spot. So I'm just going to wiggle down my mat a little bit so it goes back up to where I want it. And we're going to take a big breath in and a big breath out. We're breathing. Now this might be enough. Just the pressure of where the ball is. If you would like to layer on some movement, it's optional. You could bend the elbow. So you're looking at your palm. And big breath in, big breath out. Externally rotate the arm bone so the thumb makes its way towards the mat. Maybe it touches the mat, maybe it doesn't. And then going in the other direction where the pinky is going to make its way towards the mat. And make sure that your arm bone isn't traveling down the mat to try to get your pinky to touch. We want to keep that arm bone in alignment with the shoulder so that we're turning it, we're rotating it like a key in a lock. Big breath in, big breath out. You might feel that. Ooh, that internal rotation might have something to say. Big breath in, big breath out. We're going to do 2 more passes if you're doing the rotations, or just 2 more breaths. Big breath in, big breath out. I mean, either way, I want you to breathe. But, if you're doing the movement. Good. And then whenever you feel ready, I'm going to get up and show you where the ball needs to go. You don't actually have to get up because you're just going to shift the ball from here up onto your arm bone underneath that posterior deltoid. So the posterior deltoid makes that shoulder cap muscle and it travels over the top of your tricep. So it's going to be on your arm bone right up underneath that deltoid. This is usually pretty interesting for everybody. And you may want to take your yoga brick up to a higher facet so it's taller, because what we're going to do once we find that sweet, sweet posterior deltoid, we're going to pull the arm back. This is our retraction. And then we're going to slide the arm forward. There's our protraction. So that the ball is moving up and down the posterior deltoid line. Oftentimes, for most of us, the back of our shoulder is pretty tight. So this helps to open that up a little bit. Little forward, little back. Big breath in, big breath out. And then find somewhere on that line that feels interesting, but not excruciating. I'm going to adjust it a little bit. You can almost feel like your deltoid is being lifted up. So we're going to stay on a spot that's interesting, somewhere on that posterior deltoid run, and you're going to bend that elbow again. And this time we're just going to do external rotation. So I'm going to take my thumb towards the floor, and this should feel way more interesting. And if it doesn't, you probably need to move the ball up a little bit on your arm bone. So it's really lifting up your deltoid so that way as it contracts into this rotation, that you're kind of almost get the sense of lifting it up. And we'll come back to neutral. Big breath in, big breath out. Externally rotate. Big breath in, big breath out, and back. We're going to do 2 more. Inhale, exhale. How weighted can we be on the ball? Last one. Big breath in, big breath out. Oh, and then whenever you feel ready, let that go. Option to take a child's pose and reach your arms out in front of you. Or if you want to just come up to sit and reach your arms overhead, just feel what you got. So much space. Then we'll do the other side. So top of the armpit crease, shoulder blade side. You don't have to find the spot that is the spot. It doesn't have to be punch you in the face painful to be effective. So find where you can work, where you can breathe. Big breath in, big breath out. If you'd like to add on, you're going to bend your elbows so that you're looking at your hand. And we're going to go into some external rotation and some internal rotation. I'm going to work through this really slow. Make sure you're breathing. Big breath in, big breath out. Check in and notice if you're holding any weird tension in your face or in your butt. If you're pursing your lips, clenching your jaw, furrowing your brow, clenching your toes. Just a little scan, check in. See if you can let go of that tension and get a little heavier into your ball. A little deeper. Big breath in, big breath out. Good, one more. Big inhale, big exhale. And then you're going to shift the ball from that top of the armpit crease shoulder blade side up onto your arm bone and kind of lifting up your posterior shoulder a little bit. Boom. So again, it'll be somewhere right around here. And it's like you're trying to kind of lift this up. And then you're going to use the elevation on your yoga brick so that it gives you space so that you can protract and retract your arm. Little slide forward, little slide back so that the ball can go up and down that posterior deltoid. And breathe. Big breath in, big breath out. Let's protract and retract 2 more times, give or take. And then find somewhere on that run that's interesting. Keep it there. And just see how weighted and heavy you can get. And then whenever you feel ready, you're going to bend the elbow. And if you want to, you could support the elbow with the other hand. Like I'm having a hard time getting my arm on the table. So it feels good just to have a little support. And then externally rotate, which should make it more interesting. And then back to neutral. And a little bit of external rotation. Big breath in. And big breath out. A little bit. And back. Big inhale, big exhale. We're going to do 2 more. And last one. Big breath in, big breath out. Breathe into that external rotation. Should feel more interesting. Big inhale, big exhale. I feel like I could stay here all day. Whenever you feel ready, we'll come off of that ball. And again, if you want to do a child's pose with a big reach forward, feel free. If you want to just reach your arms overhead, feel free. But just do a little check-in. Woohoo! Good, you guys. All right, so whenever you feel ready, grab your foam rollers. And we're just going to tie it all together. So we're going to put the foam roller kind of bra line, bottom of the scapula-ish, give or take. You could always go higher to make it less interesting. Lower is usually more interesting. And interlace your fingers, bring your hands behind your skull. Let your skull really weight back into your hands. And take a big breath in, big breath out. And then nice and slow, press down into your feet to lift your butt up. And then we're just going to do some little drags. So pull your butt towards your feet so that the roller moves up your shoulders a little. And then press back from whence you came so that the roller moves down your back a little. And we're going to do that again. And you could keep this small and just stay right where you're at, or you could take it into your upper traps and down towards your low ribs or anywhere between those two. Big breath in, big breath out. Slow drag up. Slow drag back. Big inhale, big exhale. Let's do 2 more passes, as big or as small as you want them to be. Pause anywhere in there that you need to breathe. And then when you've done those 2 passes, bring the roller roughly about bra line-ish. I went traveling up my mat. Lower your butt all the way down. And then take a little bit of extension over your roller and take a big breath in. And a big breath out. And one more big inhale. Letting your ribs get really weighted towards your roller. Big inhale, big exhale. And then whenever you feel ready, you can bring your arms forward, grab onto the backs of your thighs, come up to sit. Move your roller out of the way just so that you can lie back down. So as you settle back into the floor with no props under you, see if you can just bring a little bit of awareness to the back of your skull, the back of your shoulder blades, your ribs, your sacrum, the soles of your feet. Maybe a little tuck and untuck. A little hip drop from side to side, or a little hip hike from side to side. Take a big breath in, big breath out. And then let everything get real heavy and quiet, letting the movement slowly kind of dissipate. And take a big breath in and a big breath out. One more, inhale. Find all that expansion. Exhale. Find that connection. One more big breath in. And big breath out. And you guys are cooked. Happy Monday. Thanks for coming to class. I will be here next week, but the following week, the week of the 19th, there will be no class. So just a heads up, I'm going to send out an email too, but just so it's on your radar. And I know some of you I will see in 15 minutes. So go get a snack and go pee, and I'll see you soon.